Tonight we have a very special guest speaker. Many of you have met Mike Leach, and he's going to talk with us this evening about his organization, Yellowstone Country Guardians. And this organization is really quite unique in its attempt not to simply introduce people to issues that are taking place in the park, but to create a bond between people in the local community and the land that we see out here before us. So I'm going to turn things over to Mike. And make sure you're taking notes during his presentation for your field notebook.
Taking notes? I probably should have taken some notes. Well, I mean, never do a presentation like this before all these guys stand up trying to give out all my information. Some of y'all were a little off on a few things, but you were pretty on point, pretty close. So. But I like that introduction. That'd be a good one before some of these presentations. My name is Michael Leach. I'm the Executive Director and Founder of Yellowstone Country Guardians. Many of you know that I worked in the park from 2001 to 2007 as a ranger naturalist, an interpretive ranger, and later as a bear education ranger. And you know, one of the great pleasures I had as one of the bear education rangers was to travel the park 4 to 5 nights a week and give what I like to call my wilderness sermons in front of anywhere from 100 to 400 people a night. And you're definitely going to see my sermon of sermons tonight. Some of us we call this the Yellowstone Anthem here. So we've talked about a lot of science the last 2 days. Those of you who've been in the vehicle with me and Linda or Nathan, we've talked a lot about science. I'm going to hit up some of the things that we've talked about, but Carl did a great job of just really summing up what this presentation's about, what our organization's all about. And you know, if I had to say one thing that I think we need a lot more of here in this region when it comes to environmentalism, it's love and tolerance. And this is definitely a presentation that hopefully will inspire that. One thing I wanted to touch upon before we got going, it was something we talked about a little bit today, and we were hoping to find a stop, but we just kept going, you know, from one spot to the next. Is you know, what's going on with these bears right now? You know, why they're so active, what they're doing. After the presentation, we're going to have a little bison dialogue. And so yesterday, raise your hand if you were with me and Nate yesterday. Okay, so we went up there and Nate talked about the bison issue. We're going to expand upon that a little bit here tonight. I'm going to touch upon it here this evening, and then we're going to have a little discussion afterwards. I'd like to hear some of what you have to say. And for those of you who are with us today, we weren't quite able to have that discussion. But this is, to me, the time to visit Yellowstone National Park. I showed some of this to some of you guys, but I'm all about the grizzly. Okay? That's the grizzly track. I mean, that's my mark. That's the mark of the grizzly right there. And you know, the wolves are great. I'm going to talk a little bit about the wolves tonight. They're amazing. The success story is tremendous, but we're going to talk about grizzly bears a lot tonight. And you'll see why we're going to talk about grizzlies. And one thing we're going to talk a lot about tonight, especially in the intro and conclusion, that's where you're going to get that sermon component, is the human spirit. I really believe we need to bring the human element back into environmentalism. And so, while you know, it may perturb some people to see, I think some people were surprised how many people were out in the Lamar Valley today. You know, it's very inspiring because everybody's coming out to see the wildlife. And the thing that I think makes this time of year so great is this is a very high, dry, arid plateau, and this is a period of fecundity. You hear the western meadowlark, and I mean, you look out here, this is something we yearn for. When you look out at the hills right now, when that light hits these hills just right, you see those hummocks out there, those glacial hummocks. It's really a magic light, much like we saw in Mount Everest today. But you can see things are very succulent. They're very rich right now. You know, a lot of people, I'm going to talk about an issue that is one of the most critical when it comes to grizzly bears. One of these gentlemen mentioned the grizzly bear was delisted in 2007. The main reason it was relisted is because of the lack of a food source and the unpredictable nature of what's going to happen with that food source. I'm going to talk about it tonight because I think it's the single most important food source in this ecosystem at a critical time of year. Maybe not year-round, but at a very critical time of year we call hyperphagia, which means intensive feeding. But these bears right now, you know, they're coming out of a long hibernation. The first bears to go into hibernation are the big male, or the pregnant females. The last to go in are the big males. The first to come out, big males. Last to come out are the pregnant females. So these big males, some of them have been out since our first grizzly bear track was March 2nd this year. And it was just a wintry landscape. Now you go out there and you see all that succulent green grass. You know, bears, grizzly bears, black bears are omnivores. This is a very meat-driven ecosystem. Some studies say that an adult female grizzly bear, about 48% of her annual caloric intake consists of meat. For a male, it could be upwards of 72%. Its caloric intake. But they're still keying in on grasses. But the important thing is they can only digest grasses at certain stages or in their phenological development. So, for instance, the grasses right now are very succulent. The cytoplasm is essentially a liquid protein that's easily digestible for these bears that have a slightly elongated digestive tract. They evolved from the dog family. And so they've got that slightly elongated digestive tract, and they're able to digest these vegetative species at certain stages. Things like spring beauty or biscuit root, and some of the grasses and sedges are absolutely vital. But once the grasses and flowers go to seed and the cell walls harden, the only available nutrition is in the cellulose form, which bears can't digest. So right now, they've lost 25%, up to 25% of their body weight, mostly fat. And so they're certainly keying on those grasses in between carcasses. But that's the main mojo right now, is the carcasses. And one of the things that I love about this time of year is, we're getting into the mating season. And I give a presentation around the region I call the Bear Essentials. And it's all about bear physiology, because I think bear physiology is off the hook. You think of these females, they're very promiscuous. The males are very promiscuous. They may mate with multiple members of the opposite sex, and when the egg is fertilized, it's developed very briefly from a stage known as a zygote to a blastocyst, and at that point, they have about a 220-day gestation period, but about 80 to 90% of the growth takes place in roughly the last 90 to 100 days, because instead of attaching to the wall of the uterus, that blastocyst goes through what we call suspended animation and just floats around the womb. So that it's an energy conservation strategy for the bear, so that when she goes into hibernation in the fall, if she had a great summer, which they typically have, the fall is the kicker, and we're going to talk about whitebark pine today, and why that's tonight, and why that's so important. If they had a good whitebark pine crop, like we had, not last year, last fall we had a disastrous whitebark pine crop. We had about 3 to 7 cones per tree. A good crop's about anywhere between 14 and 18. The year before that, we had over 30 cones per tree. Well, last spring we had one female with 4 cubs of the year, 4 coys, and that's almost unheard of. And I would argue that that has a direct relationship to the whitebark pine. So once she goes into hibernation, her body does a self-assessment. If she's in impeccable, great shape, multiple eggs will attach to the wall of the uterus, continue to grow. She'll give birth in the den, late January, early February, to these little rat-looking bears that have no hair, can't open their eyes, no teeth, but they're suckling on that rich milk. Anybody who here, if you're a lady and you're planning on nursing at some point, the fat content, most women's milk is about 3.5%. For the bear, it can range between 30 to 43% fat. And so we've talked a little bit about anthropomorphism when it comes to bears, human characteristics. I think with the exception of primates, there's no animals that have more anthropomorphism surrounding them than bears and wolves. And I've had the opportunity to work bear jams where there's 400 people, and this female, this sow wants to do is get her cubs across the road, and she can't get them. She's bawling at them, she's yelling at them, she's barking at them. They're just playing and running up and down the tree. And I remember one time when she just sat right on the road, showed what she needed to show to get them running for some milk. They got there, she cuffed one upside the head, slapped the other one, got it moving. And so, they're an amazing animal. They're definitely a lot of fun to watch. We had some special sightings out there today, and so my hope is, this is a presentation we often give on night 1, or what Nathan and Linda typically have me do is on the final night. So now you know Yellowstone, and I hope you'll enjoy this very spirited presentation tonight, and we can talk anything you guys want to talk afterwards in relation to bears or any question you have, but we definitely want to key in on an issue that is the one I'm most passionate about, which is the bison issue. I'm all about trying to stand up for those that I think are being wronged, and I think the bison certainly fit that bill. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Yellowstone Country Guardians throughout the presentation. If you have any questions afterwards, I got some brochures. Love to throw them out. I'd love if y'all hit us up on Facebook, get on the blog, give us a little shout out. But I think what we're doing is edgy, especially in this region. It's new, it's bold. I left the Park Service in 2007, refinanced my house. My wife was pregnant, and refinanced my house to start this nonprofit. So this thing, means a great deal to me, and I'm really excited to be able to share some of this with you here this evening. And well, actually, let's get some of these lights here.